And welcome back to another podcast with Mr. Hagan. On this podcast, we're going to continue with our example of government increasing spending on the Vietnam War. So let's imagine what would have happened back in the, 60s, early 70s. We get an increase in government spending, increased spending on the Vietnam War. So we get an increase in government spending on the Vietnam War, and we're going to use the full model, long-run aggregate supply, short-run aggregate supply, aggregate demand, to analyze what the results of this might have been. And we're now going to look at this from more of a Keynesian point of view, which means that the government is going to respond to this in some way. Government's going to respond to this situation in some way. So we get an increase in spending. That's the first thing that happens, and the increase in spending is going to cause a change in government spending. And if government spends more, then that means more spending. Let me move that out a little farther. Aggregate demand curve is going to shift out to the right as a result. And so that gets us out here to AD2. Aggregate demand shifts to the right. What's my story? My aggregate demand story is just the determinant right here, and that is simply increase in government spending. Now, as the government begins spending more, government begins buying things for the war effort, and that's going to cause the prices of those things to get bid up in the market, and so we're going to get some inflation. Prices are going to go up. On the aggregate supply side, that means the whole sticky wages thing. So we got real wages are equal to nominal wages divided by the price index, and if prices are going up, prices are increasing as a result of the government spending more money, and nominal wages are sticky, so they're fixed. So if prices go up, that means real wages are going to decline. Real wages are going to decline. Now, if real wages go down, then that means companies are going to hire more workers, so that's going to be increased hiring. And if they hire more workers, then that means that the gross domestic product is going to rise. So we're going to get an increase in the GDP, and right here that is as a result of moving along the short-run aggregate supply curve. That means finally, the final conclusion here is that we got an increase in prices. That was up here. We got an increase in the gross domestic product. That's right here. And unemployment is going to decline. Unemployment's going to decline. All right, so what's the problem here? I mean, this all seems nice. Gross domestic product is going up. Unemployment is falling. This all seems great. The problem in this case is the higher prices. We have inflation. So that would be the problem. Now, if we were looking at this from the classical point of view, which we did on the previous video, then we would focus here on unemployment. And then that would change wages and all the things that we did on the previous video. But now, instead of waiting for this all to play out on its own, the Keynesians are going to want to respond to this problem, to this inflation problem that is a result of all the spending that's going on in society. You get the increase in government spending, and that's what's driving up prices. So the Keynesians are going to respond to this with what we call contractionary fiscal policy. Contractionary fiscal policy. So contractionary just means that we're going to try to use government policy to shift the aggregate demand curve back in to the left. So we could do that. Government fiscal policy is going to be changing government spending or changing consumption by changing taxes. In this case, we'd want to be decreasing government spending, and we would want to be increasing taxes in order to decrease consumption. So my story now is going to be, it's going to be back on the aggregate demand side. My story is going to be decreasing government spending and increasing taxes in order to decrease consumption. Both of those things, decrease government spending, decrease consumption, are going to shift the aggregate demand curve back in to the left. It's going to shift that aggregate demand curve back into the left along the short-run aggregate supply curve. Now, before I say more about this, this seems a little weird here at first because, okay, so remember spending is Y equals C plus I plus G plus NX. These are all the different types of spending, and we just had the government for increase government spending for the war effort, and now we're going to come right back over here. We're going to cut that government spending again, and so why are we going to increase spending on the war and then cut spending on the war? Well, it wouldn't have to be like that. You could increase spending on the war, and then you could cut spending on something else. You could cut spending on something else, maybe on education, maybe on highways, whatever it is. You could cut spending somewhere else in order to offset this original increase in spending. Or you wouldn't have to cut government spending at all. You could increase government spending and pay for it by raising taxes, which would decrease consumption. Which would offset the increase in government spending. Either way, the story is some combination of lowering government spending and increasing taxes to lower consumption shifts the aggregate demand curve into the left. And then when that happens, that means people are going to buy less stuff. And when people buy less stuff, prices are going to begin to decline. And now we're going to do the sticky wages all over again. So real wages, let me just switch my color here. Real wages are going to, and I didn't mean to write that, sorry, real wages are equal to nominal wages divided by the price index, and nominal wages are sticky in this case, and so now prices are coming back down as people spend less, so we're going to get a decrease in prices, and the decrease in prices is going to cause an increase in real wages, and the increase in real wages is going to cause companies to hire fewer workers. You're going to get a decrease in hiring, and as they hire fewer workers, you're going to get a decrease in the gross domestic product. And so that's the moving along the short-run aggregate supply curve as gross domestic product declines. So what's the final thing that happens from beginning to end? From beginning to end, here we forgot to write here that the aggregate demand curve shifted back into the left. And then finally at the end we say prices started where they finished. They went up and came back down. Gross domestic product started where it finished. It went up and came back down. And then unemployment finishes where it started. Unemployment decreased and then went back up. Okay, so that's what happens if we get a government response, a Keynesian contractionary fiscal policy response to inflation, to spending, aggregate demand, spending, shifting out to the right and driving up inflation. All right, this has been Mr. Hagan on another Econ podcast. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you on the next podcast.